Why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know. Because if I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week, and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, you know?
The following is a presentation of Hobson Media. Woohoo!
Who's got it better than us?
This is the Church Pew Sports Podcast, featuring a group of pastors delivering bombastic takes on sports, life, and faith.
We're going to attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Take a knee.
Man, it's hard to break us now. It's hard to break us. As a matter of fact, you ain't going to do it.
Lend an ear.
These are some of the best questions I've had. I have to tell you that straight up.
As the Church Pew Sports Podcast begins.
We were all supposed to be here together, man. We're destined for this. Just stay the course.
Give each other a high five.
Yeah, and with that, we welcome you into Church Pew Sports. It is so good to have you with us here at the very end of July, very beginning of August, depending on when you are listening. It has been a while, and it's so good to reconnect with everybody. We're calling this episode Sizzlin Summer Sports News because we're going to hit the highlights today, assuming that most of you have been a little busy. You've been traveling, you've been vacationing, your toes have been in the lake, you've been on the wave runners, or maybe you've just been working and not paying attention because we do largely consider this to be the sports dead period, but it's not been dead. There have been headlines in every possible direction. Bill Hobson here, alongside, well, not physically, but at least in the Zoom windows, Pastor Paul Miller. We were alongside each other a couple weeks ago when I was in Minneapolis. You're now in Houston. I'm in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, yes. And David Collins is with us from the Grand Rapids area. So if you put a string between the three of us, you need a lot of string. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, man. The family is regathering down here. It's hot in Houston, but apparently not as hot as it was in Hawaii, where half my family came from earlier this week. So
fleeing the tsunami as it came in, like right out of a movie.
Yes, they were being chased by the waves to the runway to get out of Kauai, but they made it out fine, no issues, and their flight got in early. So what can you say?
That is, yeah, we're glad they made it in early because those scenes have been pretty wild. David Collins, how's summer life in the GR area?
It's also hot here, which is crazy, but it's funny. I'm actually going to Minnesota for my first time ever in a few weeks. I'm going to Target Field to catch a couple Tigers games. A buddy of mine, I just got off the phone with him minutes ago. He said, I'll buy you a plane ticket and some tickets to the Tigers games if you want to come out here. I was like, okay, we'll go ahead and do that. I don't have a reason not to. So yeah, I'll be at Target Field watching the best team in baseball again, who was the worst team in baseball just like a week ago. But we're the best again.
And if your trip had somehow taken place about 2 weeks ago, the three of us would have been together in the same city.
We've all been there
for the first time.
Somehow still done this on Zoom.
By the way, I am in the middle of nowhere in Upper Michigan, where constantly on my Zoom screen up pops a warning that says internet connection unstable. So just be forewarned that we may have some jitters from here to there. But let's get into the Sizzlin Summer Sports News. And, you know, there are some headlines, guys, that pop up that everybody sees. They lead off the sports centers. They're on the crawls at the bottom of the screen, and they're the subject of conversation even during the summer. And then there are some that for some odd reason go almost unaddressed, undiscussed across the board, almost like somebody doesn't want them to be talked about. And for me, that prime example is what has happened very quietly with the NFL Players Association, the NFLPA, and its representatives, some resignations, some shady hirings, and what looks like something that baseball got punished 4 years ago called collusion seems to kind of be a part of the NFL storyline, even though not many people are talking about it. But David Collins has been sitting on some thoughts. So, D, first of all, fill everybody in with the specifics and then have at it.
So the whole story came about, and I want to give credit where it's due. The podcast Pablo Torre Finds Out. They got information, they got transcripts from GMs and owners of specific teams that had basically talked about how they didn't want to offer guaranteed contracts, especially after the Deshaun Watson situation. So what they ended up doing was they communicated together to not give the amount of money that certain players deserved. You even had like the San Diego Chargers owner or the LA Chargers owner reaching out to the Arizona Cardinals owner saying, thank you for not giving guaranteed money to Kyler Murray so that we don't have to pay Justin Herbert so much when his contract is up. So you had these owners literally colluding together. And here's the part that's crazy about it. I've never been a part of a union, but the NFLPA, the Players Association, the director, Lloyd Howell, and the number 2, J.C. Tretter, who was in line for the position, basically sent out a memo to the owners of the league saying, we will not tell the players about this collusion situation. Those are the people that are the head of the organization that's supposed to be protecting the players. And so what ends up happening is they don't tell the players about this situation. Why? Because J.C. Tretter was going to be up to become the next director of the NFLPA, and the NFL was going to basically endorse him so that he would take over Lloyd Howell's position. And then it gets a step worse when you see what they're doing with the finances of these players. Lloyd Howell came back from a trip, stopped at Magic City Strip Club in Miami. The car that he got to take him back home was sitting in the parking lot for 8 hours as he went to his strip club, charged thousands of dollars to the, and guess what that money came out of? It came out of the budget for the NFLPA. It makes no sense. And since then, Lloyd Howell has quit. J.C. Tretter has quit. The owners are silent on this whole situation because they know that they'll get bombasted by the whole entire league. But here's the thing. Now you're looking at Herbert, Murray, these other players that could potentially come after the league for more money because it is clear that collusion has taken place and that players aren't receiving what they deserve as a result of what the NFL and the NFLPA have done. And now I don't know where this story goes from here, but now there's all sorts of other people coming out saying, oh, Lloyd Howell actually gained money, and J.C. Tretter and other people that were like the top level of the NFLPA have taken money that they don't deserve and doesn't belong to them. And so it's like this story is just unraveling. And at some point, we're going to have to figure out, what does the NFLPA do from here? Who do they bring in? What can even happen in this situation? Can you imagine if you're a player in that league and you find out that the director of the Players Association is withholding information from you, that the owners and GMs are colluding to not pay players what they're worth or what they deserve, and they just don't tell you? It's insanity to me. This story, it came out and no one wanted to talk about it. And now all of a sudden, Don Van Natta and all these other like really investigative journalists have jumped in and they're all starting to uncover how dirty the whole system is. And it's unfathomable to me to like think about, like, imagine paying somebody, this person is going to represent me and my best interests, and all they've done is take your money, spend it on strip clubs, and don't tell you when things are actively harming you in getting your proper worth. Crazy.
And D, help me understand and make sure that I'm saying this accurately. But the majority of the players in the NFL are not they're not trained, they're not equipped to deal in the legal realm. They're not digging into the minutia of a collective bargaining agreement. They're not looking into revenue sharing for merchandise and TV contracts. They just know what they get on the back end because their agent may have negotiated for them a really good deal. But there's one liaison between all of the players and all of the owners, and it's the head of the NFLPA. And if that guy's crooked, the whole system is doomed, right?
The problem with the system is not just that, because what they're doing is the NFL players are bringing these people in to lead their association, but they're bringing in like guys who are lawyer minded, not necessarily player like oriented. And then the other problem you have is that anything that the players want, the problem is they won't ever get it because the top level guys, the quarterbacks and the ones making all the money, why would they ever hold out? So what it does is it hurts the bottom half of all the players in the league because they can't hold out because their paychecks are literally their week to week paychecks, and they're paying for their houses and their families and all these things. So it's this built-in system that is created for somebody to take advantage of. And the problem is DeMaurice Smith took advantage of it. Lloyd Howell took advantage of it. J.C. Treader was going to take advantage of it, but now he's out, obviously, him and Lloyd Howell. They need to finally come up with somebody who understands the law, like you were just saying, understands the position that these players are in, and maybe was a former player. I mean, I know Andrew Hawkins, former wide receiver, Dominique Foxworth, former cornerback for the Ravens. These guys used to be a part of the NFLPA. They need some insight from guys like that who were players but understand the system before any of this gets fixed, because right now it's looking awful for what the players have to go through.
Paul, as we record right now, the Lions are playing in the Hall of Fame game against the Chargers, and the only players on the field are those third and fourth stringers, those guys who are at the low end of the food chain in the league and just hoping to get a job. And I think that's what David's describing as these are going to be the most impacted players in all this. What are your thoughts, Paul, as you hear David kind of summarize it all?
Yeah, so I don't want to get us off topic here. As you were talking, I was thinking about, hypothetically speaking, I was employed by a church. This is Church View Sports. And I resigned because there was some stuff that I didn't think was correct.
It was not the church in Saginaw.
It was not the church in Saginaw.
Thank you.
I'm not going to say anything more, but I am going to say that I resigned, right? And so then I was on my way out the door, and I had an exit interview with several members of the elder board. And they were talking to me about some of the things that were being said about me after I had submitted my resignation. They were saying those things to kind of justify that they were glad I was leaving, kind of a deal, right? I walked through all that stuff with these guys, and the chairman of the board looks at me and goes, "Man, I'm sorry. These things aren't true, and the way you've been treated isn't right, and there's nothing I'm going to do about it." That's what he said to me.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
He's like, "At this point, there's nothing. You've already resigned, blah, blah, blah." And I looked back at him and said, "You're right. And I'm gone. But at least I guess I'm grateful to you for admitting that this is not right the way I've been getting talked about behind my back," kind of a deal, right? So anyways, so as you're talking, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, what if I wasn't leaving? Like, what if the guy that you're supposed to be able to go to when you have an issue with your boss or with your company, what if the guy whose position is to mediate conflict or advocate for you is the guy who looks at you and goes, "Yeah, sucks to be you," basically.
Yeah.
Right? It feels like that's what you're describing. So my question, that's my big wind up to the question: what does a player do if he can't go to the Players Association? Where else does he turn? If he's not being treated correctly, what other recourse does he have? Does he hire his own lawyer and like file a lawsuit, or what does he do?
To me, that's generally the option. I think because Lloyd Howell and J.C. Treader have both left their jobs, the number one thing they can do right now is find the right person to fill those roles. The people that were in that position, DeMaurice Smith is the one that basically endorsed Howell to come in, to Lloyd Howell to come in and take over the Players Association. And Lloyd Howell, as he was preparing over the next few years to leave the Players Association, was setting it up for J.C. Treader to take over. At least at this point, you've gotten rid of two of the people that were the main reason for what was going on. So what the players need to do, again, if I'm Justin Herbert and I'm Kyler Murray and I'm any of these players that's named in this dossier, I'm going after the league and saying, I might not win anything, but I need my name. I need to put my name on something that says what you've been doing is incorrect. And then at the same time, you work with all of the players in the league to find a way to get the right people in place. That's the only thing at this point that I think they can do, because the only reason there's a salary cap in the NFL is because the owners can't control themselves when they spend money. If they didn't have a salary cap, are you kidding me? Jerry Jones would be paying hundreds of millions for anything he wanted in the league. They have a cap because they don't know how to control themselves. Like, that's literally what it is. And baseball's going through something weird right now where they don't have a floor. So the NFL has a floor and it has a ceiling. The NBA has its whole thing with max contracts and stuff. But the problem is when you keep raising the top of that, the bottom's not going up.
Right.
These guys are still getting paid nothing, and everybody at the top gets richer, which is, I mean, it's capitalist society, what we're living in. But that's what the NFL has going right now is the owners, GMs, all these people, they're playing with play money because they don't have to pay a guy, you telling me that they wouldn't be giving Patrick Mahomes all this extra money and they would be, but they don't have that ability because of the cap. So that's kind of what's supposed to be in place to keep them in check. But now we're dealing with, like I said, in MLB, the floor of this situation. Like, how do we take care of everyone in the league while also giving the people who have true value what their actual value is? And it's a difficult discussion.
And the wild part, David, is that if the Browns had not done a Browns thing and given the GDP
the worst contract in NFL history,
the GDP of a third world country to one player who was a head case, a moral head case, a on the field head. If they hadn't done that, this stuff, this graft, this scam that's being run by the head of the NFLPA probably still isn't known because there wouldn't have been talk about collusion. He would have just been misappropriating funds, which I'm going to just go out on a limb and say probably dating back to maybe it's started after Gene Upshaw, but I don't know that. But I bet you it's not just this guy and DeMaurice. I got to think it went back a little bit further because nobody knows about it. Nobody talks about it. And even though the players are technically the boss of that NFLPA rep, these guys aren't paying attention. They're not paying attention to any of that stuff. They're getting ripped off and not paying any attention. Why do you think this was able to fly under the radar so long?
I listened to Andrew Hawkins talk about this, former Bengals, Browns wide receiver, and he used to be a part of the players union. And one thing he talked about, he said, because he was on the lower end of the scale, and he said, I didn't have any time to think about any of that. I was waking up every morning at like 5 a.m. to get to the gym by 6 a.m. to work out before practice, and he goes, and the whole time I'm literally fighting with the guy across from me so that I can keep getting paid.
Right.
So it's like the last thing I could do was sit down and break down how the money was being spent, how it was being taken from owners to the players union to all these things. He goes, you tell me that a guy's going to a strip club for 8 hours a night? Like, what am I, like, I've got to win one-on-ones tomorrow or I get cut.
Yeah.
So he said that's literally the reason, because the people that have the money, the Aaron Rodgers and the Bradys and the Staffords and the quarterbacks, they don't worry about it because they're getting theirs. But anyone that's below that line, they don't have time to worry about it because their fight is for their life day after day, winning their matchups against the players they're going against.
And every team.
Okay, so while I'm in the business of making weird connections between my church world and the sports world, a couple weeks ago, I was down in Laredo, Texas, doing a site visit to one of our mission sites, and I was talking to a guy who runs a community center right on the border. Mm-hmm. And so he's dealing with all the chaos of people crossing legally, illegally, all the stuff with ICE and yada, yada. And I'm talking to him about what he does. And he's telling me just how messed up the system is. And so I say to him, if you were king for a day, what would you do to change the system? And he says, there's plenty of money. I would take all the politics out of it and all the greed out of it, and I would figure out a way to get all the money that's available, actually getting it put to use to help the people that need the help, right? So I guess, David, my question for you to wrap this would be, if you were king for a day, what would you do to the system to make it right? Anything.
Honestly, the first thing I would do is I would sit with the majority of players, and I would just, rather than talk and try to explain to them, here's what needs to happen, I would just listen to them. Yeah. What do you guys need? What do you want? And where can we find the leadership to put in place that is fighting for what you need and want? Because that's the reality. Most of these people that are in these positions are looking at them as advantages to take, and they do it. They constantly do it. They take money. They take advantage of the system. They do all this stuff so that they can gain. I would listen to the players. What do you guys want? What do you guys need? And how can I put the right people in place that take care of your needs? Because the average career in the NFL is 3.5 years. Think about that. And a lot of us think, oh, well, they're making a lot of money, so it doesn't make any difference. They'll be fine for the rest of their lives. A lot of those guys aren't making 17 million a year. A lot of those guys are making 250,000 or 500,000, 750,000, whatever the low end of that spectrum is. And they do that for a couple of years. And all of a sudden they're sitting there going broke later on. I want to put them in position to be successful. And I need to hear them out to find out how to do that, because I don't have that answer.
And it will be very cool, very interesting to watch and see if more national attention is given to this scandal with the NFLPA, this matter of collusion, the misappropriating of funds, and if the players do start to pay attention. In some weird ways, David, it actually mirrors what I've been saying about the PGA Tour for a lot of years. When they have trouble with their commissioner who's putting together these very strange rogue conversations with Live Golf, and they're all mad about it, I keep shouting to myself, basically, you're his boss. You, if you would just pay attention to something besides the automatic deposits after you finish on a Sunday, you would have fired this man years ago. And instead, now he's on his way out in about a year because he got to make his own terms. And he said, I named my successor. I'm going to stick around for another year. Why? Well, because it's $20 million a year. So that's why.
Well, and that's what makes it difficult with the NFL too, is because Roger Goodell isn't the player's boss. He's
Right.
the owners. The owners are his boss.
Yes.
And so as long as the league makes money, he gets to keep his job, and then he gets to help dictate these other people that are in these positions of power.
We're going to bring into the program now a guy who doesn't have a boss. He runs the world of broadcasting and wrestling sports fandom. He's a Michigan State Spartan fan, so we've got a constant friction between myself and Brock Rice. He's been on the podcast before. It's been a while. But as I said at the outset of the program, some of the Sizzlin summer sports news flies under the radar, like you haven't heard a whole lot about the NFL collusion stuff. And then some of it dominates the headlines. And last week was one of those moments where I'll let Brock talk about it. I think it was fair to say a complicated figure in our world passed away. And that would be Thunder Lips himself, the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan. And Brock, I was watching some of your social media posts, and I mean, it hits you pretty hard, right?
What you gonna do, brother? Yeah, man. I was actually with my wife, Bill. We were on our 25th wedding anniversary in Alaska on a cruise ship. And I was by myself having breakfast, and I checked my phone, and I had probably 100 texts and about 25 push alerts that the Hulkster had died. And it just crushed me, man. It just totally a gut shot. And I sat there and had tears in my eyes as I read all this. And all day long, people just reached out to me to make sure I was okay, because everybody knew that was my hero.
How did he become your hero? When and how?
Well, I started watching wrestling with my dad right around 1981, 1982. Used to watch Georgia Championship Wrestling on WTBS way back in the old days. Fast forward to late 1983, and the USA Network started picking up the WWF. Bob Backlund was the champion, and he lost the championship to a guy known as the Iron Sheik. You probably remember him, Billy.
Oh, yeah.
And the Iron Sheik was the champion for about a month, and he had this new challenger coming in named Hulk Hogan. In January 23rd, 1984, Hulkamania was born. He beat the Iron Sheik and became the WWF Heavyweight Champion, and the guy was just so full of charisma and had that comic book hero look, and he just I fell in love with the guy, and he was my childhood hero from that point on, man. And as you know me a long time, Billy. I never really outgrew professional wrestling. I've been watching it ever since.
Yeah.
Every Monday night is appointment television for me to this day. So
Did you meet Hulk Hogan?
Yeah. So last fall, long day at work. I'm sitting in my lazy boy scrolling Instagram, and Hulk Hogan is going to be in Heartland, Michigan, signing autographs, promoting his beer, his Real American beer. And I'm like, I'm going. And I didn't tell anybody, because if I go down there and I don't get the picture, I didn't want people to think I was an idiot. So I didn't tell anybody that I went. I snuck out of work, drove down there. Actually, it was Howell, Michigan, not Heartland.
Yeah.
And got in line, and I met the Hulkster, and it was a thrill. And then I told everybody. So I met him last fall. I got my picture with him. He signed a case of Real American beer and signed a hat for me. And here I am, man. I'm so thankful I had a chance to meet him.
Okay, Brock, Paul here. I don't
Paul.
think we've ever met in person. We've talked a few times, I think,
yeah.
in the trenches here of the podcast.
Absolutely.
So I was a Chicago guy, was in college in the late 80s, and I went with a bunch of my college buddies to some wrestling event. I'm trying to remember what the venue was, and Hulk Hogan was wrestling.
Probably the Rosemont Horizon.
I think it might have been the Rosemont Horizon, and he's like wrestling the Ultimate Warrior, I think, or something like that. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember kind of having this weird, like, I don't want anyone to know I'm going kind of thing. And then we go, and I have an absolute blast.
Oh, yeah.
Watching the show. Reminds me of NASCAR. Like, I explain to people that I go to a race and it's awesome. And they're like, how can that be awesome? I'm like, trust me, it just is. But so I get home and all my buddies are like, yeah, is that real? Is that fake? Whatever. And I'm like, I don't really care, man. I had an absolute blast watching Hulk Hogan wrestle live. So I guess my question would be, what would you say to someone who's never been to a pro wrestling event or never seen Hulk Hogan wrestle live, never had the chance to do that? What would you say to them?
I mean, pro wrestling to see live, yeah, it's silly to think about, but when you go there and see the people and see the characters and see the pyro, hear the loud, it's just the most exciting thing. And these guys are really great athletes. I mean, they're in incredible condition, so well in shape. You know, they put on sometimes 30, 45-minute matches in just incredible athleticism that you'll see. And it's theater. It's a soap opera for men, I say, and it's been my soap opera for a long time.
Soap opera for men. David, have you ever been to a match?
I've never been to a wrestling match, but I guess I do want to bring into question, though, part of the legacy of Hulk Hogan, and I know that you're a big fan. You have the Gawker situation where his best friend's wife, Heather Clark, like he sued Gawker over invading his privacy. You have the comments he made about his, to his daughter, about his daughter and who she was dating and things like that. I would agree with you 100%. I think that he's on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling personalities of all time. You can't talk about wrestling without bringing him up. But he does have a pretty complicated legacy, especially later on in his life. And how do you wrangle with that in your own personal, because you said, he was a hero of yours growing up, and the mythology of him and this picture that's painted of him, that's one thing. But when you start to see the kind of other stuff, the underbelly of it, where does that leave you?
Yeah, it was sad. It was sad to hear all that. That was back in, I think, 2016. And, you got to have forgiveness for people. People make mistakes. I mean, David, you've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. Bill, all of us, we've all made mistakes. And his was pretty extreme. And, he said a lot of horrible things. But, you got to forgive people. It tarnished his legacy. He lost his spot in the WWE Hall of Fame over it. They did bring him back in a couple years later. But it definitely tarnished his legacy, and it was a sad thing to see. And it crushed me to see that, because I thought this guy has been the hero to thousands, black, white, whoever, and he just tarnished everything he created. And they took him back, though. They took him back, and all of his fans took him back too. And as you can see, all the outpouring of love that people have been giving to him since he passed last Thursday, I think most have forgiven him. But there are others that haven't, and I understand that.
Earlier today, we're talking about some of the complicated aspects of the legacy of the Hulkster. Earlier today, Governor Ron DeSantis of the state of Florida officially declared August 1st as Hulk Hogan Day in Florida, and there's a long proclamation and the memorandum and all this stuff. And I would guess, as is often the case with things that Governor DeSantis does, there's a crowd on each side of this issue. Brock, if you were approached by Governor Whitmer and she said, Brock, do you think I should do it in the state of Michigan? What would your answer be?
100%. Yes, without a doubt. This should be a nationwide thing. In fact, tomorrow I might have him float the flag at half-staff at WGRT tomorrow morning. Of course. I mean, the guy's a national hero. The hero to thousands, millions. Should be. I saw that earlier today as well, and I thought Governor Ron DeSantis, whether you love him or hate him, what a tribute to the Hulkster. I thought that was wonderful.
Well, as we close out the conversation on that, I do want to play a soundbite from Hulk Hogan. It was during I don't think it was during a wrestling show. I think it was just an interview that he was doing, and he was asked about the things that matter most to him.
As long as I made the right choice, and followed my faith more than what people were saying, or what the newspapers or the tabloids were saying, and didn't get sucked into that. None of that stuff was real. The only thing that is really real is the stuff that's going to last forever. Your faith and your belief in God, and knowing that, once you're a Christian, you've accepted Christ as your Savior. You're not going to perish, but you're going to have everlasting life. That belief in itself and that faith is what's pretty much the only thing that's real.
Obviously it's none of our roles to proclaim whether or not his faith was authentic, but that was a pretty cool statement, and a good note to go out on. Brock, you're welcome to stick around as long as you want. We're going to tackle some other stuff, but thanks for sharing some of your Hulkster memories. I thought you'd be wearing, when you popped onto the Zoom, I fully expected to see in the tank top and in the headband. Oh, he's got the action figure right there with him.
That's awesome.
Nice. David, could you hold up yours?
Cell phone screen. Can you see it? Can you see it, guys? My cell phone screen today.
Oh, he's got the Hulkster on his cell phone screen as the wallpaper. Man.
Billy, I've spent so much money on wrestling, Hulk Hogan. I should have got some of it out. The money I've spent on going to the shows, buying his shirts, just shirts in general, figures. My wife would kill me.
Where's the autograph you just got last fall? It's within arm's reach. He doesn't have to go anywhere. He's got
a Real American Beer hat.
He's got it signed right there.
And then what was really funny about that picture I had with him, my case of beer that, of course, I didn't drink it, but it's my signed Real American Beer.
That's awesome.
I was wearing the exact same shirt the Hulkster had. It was a shirt that he wore at the Republican National Convention last year. I bought it online, and I go to this autograph signing, and the Hulkster has the exact same shirt on. So I'm walking up to meet him, and he looks at me and he says, "Nice shirt, brother." So I'm one of the 8 billion brothers that he had in this world.
Oh, man. All right. Hey, thanks for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
and
good.
Long live Hulkamania. It'll live forever.
Good to see
you. Say
you.
your prayers and eat your vitamins.
Amen, my man.
Or
Amen.
say your vitamins and eat your prayers. However it works out. Go Blue. See you later.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
That is Brock Rice. And so that's the Sizzlin Summer Sports headline number 2 on the show tonight. Here's number 3, David Collins. Pay us what you owe us. Do you have that T-shirt?
I mean, we don't have the shirts on right now, but I guess my only thoughts on that are NBA players get 51% of what the NBA makes. WNBA players get 9% of what the WNBA makes. So if you want to talk about just purely being, and I know people talk about how they lose millions of dollars. So did the NBA when it first started, et cetera. They eventually got to a place, the tipping point where they started making money. I think the WNBA will too. I don't know. People want to make the jokes and everything and say, pay us what you owe us. Oh, then you have to give back a lot of money. I'm literally just looking at it saying, if the NBA players get 51% and WNBA players get 9%, something about that doesn't quite seem fair, even though they're subsidized, I know, by the NBA. I just feel like 25%, 30%, there could be a bigger allotment of money. Because again, like we talked about earlier with the NFL, the people that are truly affected by this aren't necessarily the stars. Because Clayton Clark is going to make her money, and Asia Wilson, and all, they're going to make their money. It's the people that are part of the league that aren't necessarily going to receive a big allotment of cash. I just think that if a higher percentage was paid to them based on the new TV contracts the league has, et cetera, I think you could find a way to make a more even percentage split between the league and the players.
And I didn't do a great job of setting up the topic. If you're wondering what in the world we're talking about, at the WNBA All-Star Game, and yes, there was one, the players from both teams came out for warm-ups wearing T-shirts that said, pay us what you owe us. And Paul, when you first saw that, what was your reaction?
Yeah, my initial reaction was I thought your league was operating in the red. which is kind of what David was alluding to, right? There's the economics behind it. But then my next thought was pretty quickly I started seeing in my Twitter feed youth pastor networks posting T-shirts saying "Pay us what you owe us," because youth pastors are the notoriously underpaid members of most pastoral staffs in churches across the country. So I'm always here for a good snarky post on Twitter. So that's kind of the next place I went. But I feel like the WNBA can't get out of its own way. Like there's always just something that somebody says or somebody does that causes them to not be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the problem, that it just continues to happen. I think we might talk about that a little more later in the show when we get to.
Yeah, I cannot help it. You said it so well. I cannot help but have at the forefront of my mind a league that is openly demanding more while trying their very best to kill off their golden goose. I mean, the treatment of their star player is just, it's so mind-numbing because it's harmful to the overall cause. I don't understand, the double standard that applies to Caitlin Clark. And yeah, go ahead.
But again, Bill, I'd go back to what they were arguing for was not that.
Right.
It was arguing for literally our league's paying us 9% of their $1 billion revenue. Why can't we get more? Like when the NBA players are getting 51, like that to me is what the argument was about. I agree with you. They really do struggle with like bringing in people that have been sports fans their whole lives to come over to their league. It's a lot of new sports fans. It's a lot of different younger people, and that's fine. But I think, and Paul, I agree with what you're saying too. They can't seem to get out of their own way. But I think the heart of what they're actually asking for isn't that crazy.
Okay, so help me do some math. Okay, and I understand that you can take numbers and move them all over the scale and make them say kind of anything, really. I mean, especially if you're the NFLPA. But if you're an owner of a WNBA team and you can show on paper that this league theoretically, maybe before this most recent TV contract, was losing $40 to $50 million a year, then for the players to come out with this clumsy message of pay us what you owe us, whether they're getting 9% of league revenue or 80% of league revenue, if the league is losing $50 million a year, 80% of zero is zero. So I understand what you're saying, because in reality, the league is a little more profitable than most numbers that are being publicized. But boy, if you're looking for effective ways to communicate it, coming out on behalf of a league that is, largely unrecognizable, as Shane Gillis proved at the ESPY Awards in hilarious fashion, you've got to build the case a little more carefully. And I think that's true in any situation where you're trying to make a case for increased compensation, whether it's at your factory job or whether it's in a sports league. If you don't build the case effectively, then nobody's going to be on your side.
Yes, and I do agree with that. It's an interesting concept, and I think something just happened like that in late night television with Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
Because I would argue that shows like his and other shows that they have is what, though they're losing $40 million a year on Stephen Colbert's show, the evaluation of the company has gone nothing but up. And this is the same thing. David Sampson, the former president of the Marlins, he always said that the Marlins posted losses. But when they sold the team, they made up more than triple the losses that they ever spent. So while, yes, the WNBA is losing $40 to $50 million a year, the prices for new teams that are coming into the league, the prices for the TV money and revenue, that's all going up. So I would argue, yes, maybe individually Stephen Colbert isn't worth all that money for his company, but at the same time, you can't take away what his show did to raise the valuation for the larger portion of what's going on. And I think that's what's going on with the WNBA. The prices are increasing on the television deals and all these other things. And so the players are saying, if that's happening, can we just get a bump? And I don't see why that's an issue, because they're losing $40 to $50 million a year. Stephen Colbert literally was losing $40 to $50 million a year for the company, but the evaluation of the company went up. So is it something to do with them? Do they deserve more? I don't know. Maybe there's.
If there's any athlete in the realm of professional sports right now who has a valid claim to say, pay us what you owe us, it's probably the players on the Savannah Bananas. It's probably not a WNBA player who are struggling, if Caitlin's not in the building, are struggling to get 4,000 people to a game, most of whom are coming in for nothing whatsoever. Yes, their TV audience has grown in games where she plays. In games where she's not playing, it is test pattern levels of ratings. And so if I'm an owner, the players are talking about having a walkout. Tell me who in the general sporting public is going to go like, oh no, where'd they go? They're not there yet. So I would, if like they're going to ask me for advice. If they asked me for advice, I would say, ladies, do a better job of building your case. Because right now you come out with both guns blazing, and you haven't convinced anybody that that's what should be happening. Okay, Sizzlin Sports, Summer Sports Headline News number 3, baseball trade deadline. And Paul, when we talk baseball, there's one place we go.
Yes, we have to go to Scott Holmgren. Scott, thank you for texting me last night to tell me that the trade deadline was happening in Major League Baseball, because I may have been completely unaware. So I appreciate that.
Doubtful.
I'm going to get together with David here in a week or so when he's in Minneapolis for a Tigers game. So that'll be fun.
And Scott, as we lead you off, Scott, before we get to trade deadline stuff and the rise, fall, and rise again of our Detroit Tigers, we got to talk about this Guardians gambling scandal. And I know David wants a piece of that as well. So welcome, Scott. It's good to see you.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. This is one of my favorite days of the year. Trade deadline day is just mayhem on the baseball front. It's always fun. But in terms of, it's a little bittersweet, I will have to say, this week with the passing of Ryne Sandberg, Hall of Famer, Cub great, Cub legend. He was the guy that I would watch all through the high school and junior high school, college. Ryne Sandberg was probably my favorite Cub. I have his jersey. I've got a lot of good memories of watching him play the game, and really appreciate some of the things lately that were said about him, specifically by Rick Sutcliffe. Things that seemed to lean into a spiritual dimension, which was pretty cool to hear them talk about praying together and expressing, hey, I love you as a brother. Good stuff there. But to the gambling thing, all I know, honestly, I've been so preoccupied with other things in life and the trade deadline. All I know is, the Emmanuel Clase, I think it was about him, right? And that's about it. So I will defer to David and his expertise on this matter, other than I just know about it, but I don't have much of an opinion yet.
Yeah, so the first case was Luis Ortiz, actually. There was a elevated amount of money gambled on his first pitch from like the second and third inning of 2 different games. And that first pitch was like 4 feet outside every time. That's what's kind of happening with Clase is basically the first pitch strike in the 9th inning is what people are gambling on. It's going to be a ball or a strike. And he threw, I just watched a video on it, he threw like his last 5 or 6 straight into the dirt, like 6 feet from home plate. So what's going on? Well, one of the things that I actually like is that now that these gambling companies are getting into sports, they're able to flag these things at least a little bit early on. But apparently there's at least 1 or 2 other unnamed pitchers from Cleveland that have been a part of what's going on there. But yeah, Clase and Ortiz have been the 2 that have been kind of like shown, this is fishy. Like, why are all these people betting this money on you throwing a ball on the first pitch of the 3rd inning of a random game in June, and the pitches are 6 feet outside? It seems pretty obvious what they're doing.
And as we think about that from the perspective of a Tigers fan, it wouldn't make us too sad if Clase did not return anytime soon this season. I believe he's been benched, right? Or put off to the side.
He's been suspended for now. But Bill, as far as a Detroit fan goes, this is the same thing with Malik Beasley. Because what caught Malik Beasley was him going under for his rebound numbers. And his rebound numbers were like 1.5, and he would go with 0 rebounds for a full game. And they started to realize, like, these small things you're doing, it's the numbers increasing on, like, why are so many people gambling on Malik Beasley's rebounds in the first half? It makes no sense. That's what's triggering all this stuff. But yeah, Clase, I think, has been suspended for right now.
So do you think that it's better that the gaming companies are policing this because the leagues weren't, even though the leagues are in bed with the gaming companies? I don't know what to do with this weird confluence of conflicting interests.
No, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I completely agree with you. I think once gambling got into sports, it made gambling on games and things easier and more fun. But the reality is, if you have people actually looking out and policing for this stuff, whereas like in the past, this was going on, we just never knew about it. Now we're finding out about it. I mean, Tim Donaghy existed, and he existed for a while before they caught him. And guess what? A bunch of guys that he worked with closely and texted with before games are still reffing games in the NBA. This stuff's been going on. It's just now, at least we have a little bit of a way to go. The money coming in for that doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless somebody knows something. So it's hard to say, Bill, because gambling involved with sports as marketing partners shouldn't be allowed if you're not even letting these guys step into a casino because you're afraid of what they might gamble on.
Yeah, well, I think David might have just answered my question. Like, my question is it only because now the pro leagues are in collaboration with the gambling companies or whatever that we're finding out about this? Has it been going on all along and we just have not been aware? And it sounds like you're saying, well, yeah, that's the case. So there's that. And then my other question is, while we have Scott on the call, I got to know what like the top 3 trades, what are the headlines from today? What are the things that have happened that I ought to be aware of as a peripheral baseball fan?
Yeah, no, I can share my thoughts on that. It was wild and crazy. There were dozens. If you don't know the volume, there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of players who changed teams in the last 48 hours. So it's not just like, 3 or 4 guys here and there. Every team was making trades back and forth, and some were so inconsequential they don't even show up as a blip. But the biggest ones, here's what I would point out. I would say the winners, right? Who really won? For me, one of the winners were the San Diego Padres. So the Padres got a new closer, a guy named Mason Miller with the A's, who's a fireballer. They needed some help in their bullpen. And then they got 2 solid hitters from Baltimore. They got another starting pitcher, Nestor Cortez, who had a great career with the Yankees, from Milwaukee. And then they got a catcher from Kansas City. They essentially added 5 starting players to their roster, right? That's like 20% overhaul right there to their roster in areas where they really need it. And a lot of people criticize that they gave up way too much. A lot of their high prospects were traded to get all that haul. I don't weight prospects nearly as much because they're unproven, right? You can certainly grade them and weight them as need be, but hey, until they actually, if they even make it to the big leagues, right? That's the question. But I think the Padres did something significant enough with enough different pieces and enough different trading partners to say, yeah, they really did something well. A second team I would say would be Seattle, the Seattle Mariners, because they have a great pitching staff, but the problem was their offense. Of course, they have Cal Raleigh, who is everybody's favorite at the home run derby. He's having a phenomenal year at catcher, right? Just crushing it, having an awesome all-star year, but they were struggling in other parts of their offense, and they went and nabbed 2 corner infielders, a first baseman and a third baseman from the Arizona Diamondbacks who have really fallen on hard times the last couple of weeks, and upgraded with Eugenio Suarez, who himself is crushing it with home runs, and Josh Naylor, who, Tigers fans remember from his time in Cleveland. 2 real powerful additions to the lineup. That is going to make the battle in the AL West even that much more exciting to watch between Seattle and Houston, who got back Carlos Correa from Minnesota in a sell there. So so I think San Diego is one team, Seattle's another team, and I'd say the third team, not as big names, but I think the New York Yankees really did some smart things here at the trade deadline. They had a big need at third base, and they went out and got Ryan McMahon from Colorado. Question if anybody who plays for the Rockies is, can they sustain their numbers outside of Denver, right? That's TBD. But he's had a good couple games. That trade happened a few days ago, and he's already been playing for the Yankees, doing really well. And then they went out and got 2 relievers because they have Devin Williams, who was lights out in Milwaukee, but he struggled, and their whole bullpen's been fairly erratic. And they're down looking up at the Blue Jays. They're in unusual territory here. They needed to shore up their bullpen, and they did just that. They got David Bednar from the Pirates, and they got Camilo Doval from San Francisco, essentially 2 former closers, 2 more quality arms in the bullpen. And so I think the Yankees need some credit for what they did. But those would be the 3 big teams. Aside then from saying, how about them Tigers and how about them Cubs? I would say those 2 teams did the exact same thing. They added like a 4th-tier starter, and then they brought in like 50 bullpen pieces. They're trying to juggle that. And I really can't blame them because the offenses are solid, and it was really pitching that needed some reinforcement. So they did, I think, okay. I think the fan bases are a little disappointed. I know I am as a Cubs fan. You guys can speak to it as a Tigers fan. But it sure made for an interesting trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess my question to you, knowing as much as you do about baseball, is I don't think the Tigers made a ton of moves because their prospects are too good. Like Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, they have 5 guys in the top 50, and every team wanted one of these guys for a reliever. Like the Red Sox go and get Dustin May, and they overpaid for him. A lot of these guys overpaid for these rentals. And so I wasn't that I wasn't happy because I was expecting Suarez or a big name somewhere in there. And I'll tell you what, you're absolutely dead on about the Mariners. The top 5 of that lineup is what? J.P. Crawford, Julio Rodriguez, Raleigh, Arozarena, and Suarez? That's nasty. Yeah. But I'm looking at what the Tigers did, and I'm like, I just think the asking price, because they weren't going to give up one of their top 5 guys, and that's who everyone wanted. So Briseño and all these dudes, like they're just not. So I was. And I don't know what the Cubs situation is with their minor league system, but like I'm assuming like a big part of why these guys didn't go get. I mean, Chris Paddock just pitched 7 innings the other day, 1-run ball. Not a bad pickup if you think you can actually coach these guys up. And Chris Fetter is one of the best in the game.
Yeah, if Mike Soroka does that in his first start for the Cubs, I'd be thrilled, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we didn't give up anything either because we went kind of for low-hanging fruit. We didn't have to give up Owen Cassidy. He's one of our top outfield prospects. Alcantara is another outfield prospect. So we had a couple of those guys, and I'm like, darn it, I don't want to bankrupt the farm, right, by going out
exactly
flash. But we also really could have used like a frontline starter, and there weren't many of them. That would be another thing for you, Paul, to know that this trade deadline class was one of the weaker ones. Like the last couple of years, there's like been a bevy of stars trading teams, and this one just didn't have a lot of that. I mean, Carlos Correa wasn't on anybody's radar, and then boom, he flew. So it was really different type of thing. But yeah, David, I agree with you. Prospects are tricky. That has got to be one of the toughest things in baseball as a general manager,
in sports,
and any sports, because you just don't know. And prospects in baseball, I think. Again, I'm not as familiar with the other sports, but they just don't seem to be as reliable as prospects in other sports.
And a lot of times when they do eventually get to the place where they're contributing, you were surprised by it. I mean, the Tigers had Eugenio Suarez in their organization. He played for us at shortstop for a couple of years before we let him go, and then he turned into a 30-homer-a-year guy. Nobody saw that coming. Nick Castellanos, he was a good hitter with us, turns into a really great hitter with the Phillies. So you're right. It is kind of hard to judge what they're going to be. But when you get all these guys that are near the top 10, top 20 of like everyone's major rankings, you've got to expect a lot in return for them. And your Twins, by the way, Paul, are selling like crazy.
His Twins.
They sold everybody.
I was keeping my
Twins. Yeah.
I was keeping my eye, Scott, on 2 players, Justin Verlander and Stephen Kwan from the Indians. I thought the Indians were probably in sell mode because of what's happening to their bullpen. And I'm just so impressed with Kwan. And he waved goodbye to the fans in the left field bleachers yesterday, I guess, assuming that he had maybe played his last game. Did he go anywhere? And I guess I would subsequently ask, was there ever an expectation that Verlander would end up somewhere else?
Yeah, I don't think Quan did. I'd ask David to verify, but I don't think he did. And Verlander, you could have said the same thing about Scherzer, but the Blue Jays are just killing it right now. I don't think Verlander was on anybody's talk. I mean, there is such a shift though in terms of a youth movement that I really think it's about controllable years. Those guys who are in their 25, 26, 27, just right before they're supposed to hit their prime years. And you didn't see nearly as many veterans, big name veterans like that like we've seen in previous years. So it was just it's like a different draft class almost. Every year is its own thing, has its own characteristics, and you never know. I'm constantly surprised. That's why this is so much fun for me in the chessboard that takes place behind the field, right? The repercussions over the last 2 months for the pennant drive is being stirred up right now, and it'll be exciting. I can't wait.
Stephen Kwan staying a Cleveland Guardian is going to haunt me. He just haunts.
He's a killer.
Tigers.
He's a killer.
He's a killer. Yeah. We can't get him out.
No.
And I think the deal with Verlander was that San Francisco basically told him, we will trade you if you find a suitable partner, but nobody came through, and not even the Tigers, which, I mean, honestly, like I said, what the Tigers did, bringing up Troy Melton and bringing in Paddock and a couple other guys, I don't have a problem with it. It would have been nice to have a splash, but that's always what fans want. So.
Well, what's crazy to me is the first big trade was the one that happened weeks ago when Devers went from Boston to the Giants, right? Like there was a signal, like Buster Posey, what a great move. And unfortunately, the thing is totally flamed out. And the Giants traded away Mike Yastrzemski. He's gone, right?
Yeah.
So they're
giving the Royals, right?
To the Royals, yeah. It was crazy. So I mean, again, you never know. There are no sure things at the trade deadline. For as much as we complain and moan about, oh, we did this or we didn't do this or whatever, it's dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Scott, it is good to have you with us as always. I know that you're super busy with family stuff and been on the road, so thank you for checking in and bringing us up to speed on the trade deadline. And as we recap our Sizzlin summer sports news, we knew we had to have you as part of it. So it's good to see you, brother.
Good. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. You guys take care.
You got it.
Yeah, brother.
Okay, now listen, we're going to go a tad bit longer than usual. We try to make these episodes about an hour long, but we haven't done one in like a month, and we've got all this pent-up energy. There's one more Sizzlin summer sports news item that we've got to get to because it's almost football season. Well, I mean, there's exhibition football on as we're recording, but there's what used to be student athletes. They're now called minor league professionals in the college ranks. They're getting ready to play, and so every conference before play begins has what they call a media day, and the media day always, for the conferences, always takes place in one of the cities represented by the conference, which is why the Big Ten, Paul, had theirs where again?
They went to Vegas, baby, because they didn't have enough cities to choose from.
No, there's only 18
there are 27 teams in the Big Ten.
So they went to Vegas in a back hallway with no signage, no awareness of anything going on back there. And Jack Sawyer, that former Buckeye player now in the NFL, had a chance. I don't know who did the interview or what the context was, but he got a chance to speak up a little bit about his thoughts on the rivalry game. And Sharon Moore got to say a few things. Paul, why don't you set the scene for the soundbite we're about to hear?
Yeah, there's been a few things at Big Ten Media Days. Like, I love the back and forth that happens. Jack Sawyer wasn't at Big Ten Media Days, but he decided it was time to talk about what his thoughts were about their games against Michigan. And it's real easy to tell which side of the rivalry you're on by how you react to Jack Sawyer, because he's polarizing.
Yes.
We'll just say it that way. I don't know that I'm a big Jack Sawyer fan, but it was great seeing him get that touchdown against Texas, but we won't go there. And then you got, I don't know the guy's name, some guy from the University of Michigan, right? Because every team brings 3 players to media day. Some guy from Michigan decided that he needed to talk about how Ohio State's natty wasn't a real natty because they lost to Michigan. And I'm like, bro, really? So there's that guy. Whatever that guy's name is. Sorry, I don't know who
it was either.
I don't know the guy's name. And then you got Sharon Moore, who's like, yeah, I've told my team that there's no more flag planting because that shouldn't be a thing. And so you have all, and of course, that's another example of a quote where, depending on whether you're a Michigan fan or an Ohio State fan, you'll have an opinion about that, right? And so, what I am learning through all this is that despite my best efforts to be an Ohio State fan that doesn't hate Michigan, I'm getting forced by people on both sides of the conversation to plant my flag on one side and not on the other. As much as I refuse or try to refuse to do that, I just want to be a Big Ten fan. But we found a soundbite from Jim Rome, who I didn't even know Jim Rome was still a sportscast guy.
David probably knew that, but I didn't know
so
that.
I didn't know that. And he came out with a quote. He put everybody on blast, and I thought it was awesome. So I just wanted us to at least listen to part of it.
You about the Michigan men? You Michigan men? You're always acting like we're above this. We're actually the class in this. We are Michigan men. We're the actual personification of class. Well, what are you talking about? I want to congratulate them on their natty win, but it wasn't really a win because we beat them. Oh, okay. Let me set you straight, my man. It definitely was a real win. Now, I know the game is everything. It is. Unless you win the national championship. The game is everything unless you go to the college football playoff and then proceed to hammer Tennessee, then run rampage over Oregon, and then punch Texas in the face, and then go beat up Notre Dame.
And it goes on and on and on as he continues to rightfully, I think, make that point. So, Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, you cut it off before he put Ohio State under the microscope, but that's okay. He comes back around and he says, "Hey, Ohio State, I have an idea for you. How about you beat your rival?" Like that was his whole thing there. And he talks to Jack Sawyer. He's like, "Yeah, it's not a great look, Jack, if you get beat by your rival and then you pick a fight with them afterwards. You know, the whole flag planting thing and everything else." And so it was, if you find the whole quote and listen to it, he basically lights up everybody. And I think that's, at Big Ten Media Days, that is what should happen. That is what should happen.
And probably should happen in one of the markets represented by one of your schools. They're located in major media markets. I mean, you could do it.
UNLV's come to the Big Ten, apparently.
Exactly. You got to keep your eyes open for UNLV. David, anything you want to add about the Rome comments or the texting discourses we've had over the last few days?
I mean, I can agree with Jim Rome and putting everyone on blast because everyone in the situation does kind of look stupid.
Yeah.
But the reality is he gets to sit there and he has to talk alone in a mic for hours a day. So he just takes every side of everything. And so to me, while I think he's funny and that was good content, in the end, I don't think he's really saying anything against anyone in particular because he was just flaming everybody. Hey, Michigan, you're stupid for this. Hey, Ohio, you're stupid for this.
Right.
Like, in the end, you're kind of like, okay, so he just says whatever he wants about whoever he wants. And then guess what? He gets paid millions of dollars to do it tomorrow too.
Okay, so in case you're all wondering, in the heading of sizzling summer sports news, we've covered NFL collusion, the Guardians gambling scandal, the Major League Baseball trade deadline, the passing of Hulk Hogan, the Big Ten Media Days, and a little bit of baseball stuff thrown in there. So I think it's fair to say we've hit the highlights. Now let's move into Holy Discontent.
It's time to blow off some steam. Get it off your chest. Rant about what's most bothering you.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now you're going to hear about it.
It's time for Holy Discontent.
Yeah, David, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, so my holy discontent is whatever on earth was that 3-week period the Tigers just had,
I know,
where they went 1-12, got swept by the Mariners. The All-Star break went 0 for 8 at the plate, gave up a home run and a bunch of other runs, then come out of the All-Star break and lose 11 out of 12. That is my holy discontent. What in the world? Riley Green, I'm glad you went with the mustache and we've won 4 games since you went with the mustache. Why do you have to strike? hit a home run in a game where we aren't up by 5 or down by 5. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's my holy discontent.
I thought you might throw Baez into that as well, who's resorted and reverted.
But I never expected Baez to be what he was in the first half. That was a mirage. I'm glad he got into the All-Star game because that was funny and fun. He's still swinging at outside pitches that are 4 feet outside. Yes. He's doing the exact same stuff. But you know what happened? Andy Ibanez comes up and he's hitting. We get a random Chris Paddock from the Twins and he's going 7 innings. Riley's hitting bombs. Torque's hitting. All of a sudden, everything's going well again.
Yeah.
That's going to be that guy, by the way, if we get there.
Okay. Paul, you're wholly discontent.
Are you still optimistic about the Tigers' postseason outlook?
I don't know if this team can win the World Series. But I mean, do I see a similar run to last year? Can they go in and win a playoff series against a Houston or a Seattle or something? I do, because I think you've got the thing, and that thing's name is Tarek Skubal. And so as long as he's there, he can win you 2 or 3 games in a series.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I need to know. My holy discontent is back with the WNBA. This week. I just saw this on Twitter and it made me laugh. Remember earlier when we were talking about the WNBA can't get out of its own way? So they had a game going on. I don't even know who the teams were, but one of the players, she gets her ponytail, her wig, pulled off mid-game accidentally by one of the other players. She grabs the wig and she runs directly to the locker room. And the reaction of the announcers, and then the fact that there's a couple of fans that are laughing about this and making fun of the situation, and they get ejected from the arena. I think we've got the clip of this. It's actually pretty stinking funny.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. She gonna go head to the back. Oh, no.
Timeout called for Copper to deal with the malfunction. They're having Alyssa Thomas and Nate Tibbetts point out which fan it is so that security here at Care First Arena can have that dealt with. So the officials are now talking to arena security here.
They made fun of her. That was that they made fun of her.
They made fun of her for the situation on the floor. Yeah. They need to be kicked out of the arena. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Yeah. This from the league who's trying to make us look at women's professional basketball players as real athletes, and they choose their marketing campaign to be "Let her cook," right? So I don't know how we're expected to take the WNBA seriously when, like I said earlier in this conversation, they just can't seem to get out of their own way.
I cannot fathom ejecting a fan under the premise of they made fun of her. They should have emptied the arena in that case. So, and by the way, you think about playing. They say you can either play injured or hurt, and there's a difference between the two. I don't know where the loss of wig comes into all of that, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if I'm in a Game 7 Willis Reed kind of a situation, I might consider. Now, this is a guy who has no hair, so take that for what it's worth. I might consider not wearing the wig onto the court to start with. I might just leave it back in my locker for post game. Yeah. But hey, what do I know?
Well, just think about what happens to someone with dreadlocks under an NFL helmet. That's legal to grab that bad boy.
That's right. And he can't run it. Well, he can run into the locker room, but they'll never let him come back out if he does. My holy discontent has to do with Time magazine, and I'm sure you guys are avid readers of Time. Because magazines are so popular these days. They it's either last week or month, I don't know how frequently they publish anymore. They put out their list of the top 100 most influential sport or podcasts in history. Somehow on the list, they leave off Joe Rogan. They leave off Adam Carolla, who kind of invented podcasting. They leave off to Pardon My Take, which is a gigantic sports podcast. And they leave off Church Pew Sports. Who's on the list? A tennis podcast and an equestrian podcast. We're talking of all time. We're not talking about this month or this year. We're talking of all time. And so if you wonder, whatever happened to Time Magazine and its irrelevance, I'm not sure right now it would make the list of the top 100 magazines in the current culture. That's for sure, maybe of all time. But I thought
do you know do you know that tennis podcast name?
I do not.
The Tennis Show.
Come on.
That's it.
That's good.
I got to move on. That's fantastic.
Right now, this minute, today, this week,
the tennis show. Oh, all right, David, we're giving you time for You're That Guy. What do you got?
My that guy this week is the Detroit Tigers. I mean, 4 in a row. They look like the best team in baseball. I can't believe Riley Green's hitting. Everyone's mashing the ball. This team Chris Paddock comes in and wins a game, goes 7 innings, 1-run ball. I can't think of a thing about this team that I don't love right now. There you go.
I gotta put the Holy Discontent and the That Guy back-to-back sound bites. That would be good. Paul, you're that guy.
My that guy this week is Nick Saban. I believe we have the clip. The rumors flying about him getting back into coaching, and he gives the absolute perfect response when he's asked.
I never really ever had a thought about getting back into coaching until 2 days ago. Miss Terry said I had to run the sweeper in the entire downstairs. So while I was running the sweeper, the thought occurred to me, when you were coaching, you had a heck of a lot better job than this.
That's a good soundbite.
There you go. Saban is the GOAT, man. He's a legend, and that is the absolute perfect response to the question, are you going to get back in coaching? Mad props to Nick Saban.
My that guy will actually lead directly into the 3-minute message. So let me roll the open for the 3-minute message, Paul, and before you jump in, I'll give you my that guy.
Homer, I'd like you to remember Matthew 7:26. The foolish man who built his house on sand.
And you remember Matthew 21:17.
And he left them and went out of the city into Bethany, and he lodged there?
Yeah. Think about it.
Yeah, think about it. And I know where Paul is headed with his 3-minute message, so I'm going to jump in ahead of time and kind of lay the groundwork because my that guy was also one of my summer headlines, but we didn't want to take the time to deal with it then. It's Scotty Scheffler. Scotty Scheffler, the number 1 golfer in the world, dominated at the Open Championship, sometimes called the British Open, and also, by the way, I think dominated the Happy Gilmore too with some pretty good cameo stuff, including at the very end is pretty funny, and it's not going to win an Oscar, but it was fine entertainment for the most part. Before the Open Championship, Scotty was in a press conference, and somebody asked him about deep meaning and what it would mean to him to win this tournament. It's a little bit of a longer soundbite than I would normally play here, but it's going to dovetail nicely into what Paul's going to share. I want you to hear the perspective of the number 1 golfer in the world on what it all means to him.
It feels like you work your whole life to celebrate winning a tournament for like a few minutes. It only lasts a few minutes, that kind of euphoric feeling. And to win the Byron Nelson Championship at home, I literally worked my entire life to become good at golf, to have an opportunity to win that tournament. And you win it, you celebrate, get to hug my family, my sister's there. It's such an amazing moment. And then it's like, okay, now what are we going to eat for dinner? Life goes on. Is it great to be able to win tournaments and to accomplish the things I have in the game of golf? Yeah. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes just to think about, because it's literally worked my entire life to become good at this sport, and to have that kind of sense of accomplishment, I think is a pretty cool feeling. To get to live out your dreams is very special. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not out here to inspire the next generation of golfers. I'm not here to inspire somebody else to be the best player in the world, because what's the point? This is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of like the deepest, places of your heart. There's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number 1 in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? And I really do believe that, because what is the point? You're like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. It's like showing up at the Masters every year. It's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know, because if I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week, and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, you know? So we really do. We work so hard for such little moments. And, you know, I'm kind of a sicko. I love putting in the work. I love being able to practice. I love getting out to live out my dreams. But at the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point.
Yeah, man, that's just gold, right? And so I'm thinking about our conversation, all the things we've talked about today. We're talking about Scotty Scheffler giving us all a reality check that we really don't know what to do with when the number one guy who's reached the top of the mountain says this ain't it, right? And then we got collusion going on. We got gambling scandals going on. We got the Big Ten media days where we didn't talk about Tony Petitti talking about how the Big Ten wants the CFP to be structured. All of these things are about money. Every single one of these conversations is about pursuing money until you get to Scotty Scheffler, right? And he says, yeah, if I could paraphrase or summarize what he's saying, and there's more quotes after that where he unpacks it even further, and it's just genius stuff. He goes, yeah, man, I'm competitive. I'm after the trophy, and I'm as crazy competitive as anybody else. But ultimately, that's not the thing that satisfies. I have this conversation all the time with people where we talk about how and where do we root our identity, right? Our identity needs to be child of God first. Then a member, like in my case, I tell my kids, child of God, member of the Miller family, everything else, right? And when you understand your identity as a child of God, then the excellence that God puts inside you is freed up to come out. And that's what Scheffler's trying to say to us, right? He's saying, I know who I am. I know what's important to me. I know the ground on which I stand. I know where my life is rooted. And as a result, I can fanatically chase winning a major or winning the FedEx Cup or whatever it's going to be, or being the number one golfer in the world. I can fanatically chase all those things, and I can do that with a great sense of freedom because my identity is not tied to whether or not I win. And ultimately, it's not about the money for him.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Easy to say when you've got millions.
You have the money, yeah.
But it's not about that. You know, Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to challenge all of us this week to think about how well we're doing at making our identity as a child of God, as a member of his family, making that where we place, that's what we treasure, what we place on the throne as the most important thing in our lives. And I would argue that when we do that, when we get that part figured out, everything else can flow from there. And the excellence, like I said, that God has put inside of you is then free to come out because you're not all bound up by whether or not the outcome is going to be what you want it to be. So Scotty, thank you. Thank you for being real. Thank you for being the best dang golfer in the world. And thank you for telling everybody that even though you're the best dang golfer in the world, that's not what's most important to you.
Well said, and how fun for us to get back together. It's been a while. David, thanks for doing it. Thanks also to Brock Rice and Scott Holmgren and Paul. And perhaps by the next time we record, the two of you will be in the same city for a meal, and we can tell stories of the live and in-person encounter between David Collins and Paul Miller. Can you imagine the excitement? Thank you all for listening. Please subscribe to Church Pew Sports. We went a little bit long today, but man, we haven't been here for a month. So if you need to break it into chapters, break it into chapters. We're glad to have you with us. Follow us on X and on Facebook and at churchpewsports.com. We'll talk to you again next time right here on Church Pew Sports.